My name is Duncan. I was born in Georgetown, Guyana in South America. And that's a long way from here. I had a couple of uncles who were Marine captains. And we were always able to get a free trip to and from Georgetown onto the farms. And one day we were coming back, and as we moved out of the river into the Atlantic Ocean, the sun was going down, a beautiful evening, and all of a sudden everything got nasty. The waves were, they estimated to be about 35 feet, going up and down over the top. And we saw a few ships passing, but as we got down, you couldn't see them. And that said, it was the first time I was ever, shall we say, seasick. This went on for about 6 hours. About 4 o'clock in the morning, we saw the sights and the lights of the city. And it took us, we were elated then, but it took us another 2 hours before we hit land. That was an experience I always remember, because I thought to myself, I should not have been here speaking to you now. But maybe the good Lord has had something for me in line. Mother was always shall we say, a rebel. And she changed to Assemblies of God. One Sunday, this preacher got up. He was an evangelist. And he read from John 11:35. And that verse, as you know, just 2 verses. Jesus wept. He closed the Bible and he started preaching. I was, shall we say, transfixed really. And at the end of his rendition, I thought to myself, I want that. As I said, I was about 14 years or 15 years at the time. And I gave my life to Jesus then. I say, although I, shall I say, grew up in a church, as youngsters you don't really understand until the call that gets you there comes. So I became a Christian then. I was baptized on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean on a beach with several others. I was 18 and someone said to me, a friend, I'm going to England, do you want to come? Why don't you come with me? I said, no, it's too cold. No. He said, I'll pay your fares. I said, it's still too cold. And anyhow, that was February. He left in March and he came to England. 6 months later, my mother said to me, I think you should come you should go to England. I did not know she would arrange with this guy for me to come to England. So I had a very beautiful journey. I visited at the time, maybe, like I said, this was a cruise liner, and we visited about 15, more than 15 different islands in the West Indies, and Central America, even Venezuela and places like that. Then we crossed from the West Indies into Europe, landed at a place called Vigo in Spain, and from then on to Southampton. As we landed in Southampton on, like I said, the 21st of October 1959, it was a dark, dreary morning, wet. And you know, in those days, all the houses were nearly black. I took one look at the place, and I thought to myself, what on earth am I doing here? I ended up in the Air Force. My mother by then was here in England. My father died. As time went on, I went from places to places in the Air Force. Ended up Berlin in Germany, Malta, Cyprus, Kuwait, and here back in England. I could remember I received a letter from my late father that was 3 years old. It took 3 years to catch up with me because of moving from country to country. I met a very famous television star who suggested to me at the time, he said, "You've got a very good voice, I think you should be in radio." So when I got to Malta, I decided to try it. I turned up at the radio station and I asked the then controller, Alan Hargraves, for a job. As I was going through the door, Alan said to me, "By the way, do you know anybody here?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Who?" And I gave him the names of 4 of the announcers. And he said, his reply was, "Don't bother to come back on Monday. You can start now." So I always thought maybe because I did not, shall we say, name drop, they thought I was genuine article. So after a few months of training, I turned up one Saturday for a shift, and the person, one of the announcers, handed me a pile of records, and they said, "You're on." I became, shall we say, a bit more proficient, and I had 2 of my own programs on different days. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I moved from there to Cyprus. I ended up here in Manby in Louth, an Air Force station. I was supposed to spend 30 odd years in the Air Force, but I asked my station commander, my senior medical officer, to cancel my engagement. He did. He got it cancelled. I came here to Lincoln to visit a friend who was in the Air Force at the time. And my wife came back after, the 2 wives and the children went walking around the place. And she said, "I saw the house I want, can I have it?" So I ended up buying a house just across the way from here in Branston. And I became, shall we say, separated from my wife, and I moved over Hartsholme Fields, just on the edge of Lincoln. I ended up with new life. And then I became a city councillor, and I wrote an article in the papers about Birchwood. And Stuart Bell saw this article, unknowing to me. I was told later. He saw the article and he called his team together and said, "Look, I think we've been ignoring this area." So they sent William across to Birchwood to plant the church. I didn't know at the time. I had no idea of their plans. But about 3 or 4 years later, myself and William we were having lunch, and he said to me, he decided to tell me why I came. I made a journey from Georgetown, Guyana to Lincoln, and why I left the Air Force at the time I didn't leave it. Because if I had stayed on, I would not have been in Lincoln. I would not have had the, shall we say, become a councillor to write an article for Stuart to see. So then I found out why my journey that started in Georgetown, Guyana was necessary. I had to come to Lincoln whether I liked it or not, because the good Lord have a way of putting things in places that we don't know about. There are times when we all wonder why this happened to me in the first week of my holidays. COVID-19 hit, and I was in a part of Portugal, Rio Maior, that you couldn't get out of. You had to have a very good reason to come in or out. So I was locked down in Portugal for 3 months. It was a very, shall we say, enjoyable time because I was among family. I didn't have hotel bills. And I came back to England at the end of May. I said 3 months afterwards. And I had a road accident. And I had to ask myself, why me? But you've got to be philosophical and I didn't, shall we say, rebel against it or whatever. But I was in my kitchen making a cup of coffee on the 2nd of December that year. And all of a sudden and I thought to myself, I gotta get down to the floor. On my way down, I lost it completely. And I had an argument with the chair I still have here. That accident caused about 4 or 5 different problems. One was mobility. Since I've been, shall we say, confined to a wheelchair, I've gotten a lot of, shall we say, time on my hands. And I read. I find that, shall we say, I gain inspiration from it. And I think I am more of a Christian now than I was before. And the good Lord has become, shall we say, more real to me. What I do, if I may use the word regret, is that I didn't take this up while I was, shall we say, active. I took but I took too long into really getting into things. But God has become much more real to me than He was before. Get engrossed into the Word of God. Read the Bible, and you will find out really what I'm talking about. Don't keep it to yourself. Tell somebody about it. I tried to do that, so everybody I came in contact with. Even now, when I was yesterday, when somebody came up and I saw him and told him, "You're the person that is coming up." And she said to me, one of the hymns were being sung, and she said, "That's my favorite hymn." Then I told her, yes, it is inspirational. Sometimes people can be afraid, and I have come across this at times when I regretted not speaking or telling somebody about Christ. And I remember now, one of my patients, I thought at the time she was a good person, because nearly everywhere I go in homes to treat people, this woman was there, either shopping for people in the home or talking to them. But when she died, like I said, I thought to myself she had to be a Christian. But I was, shall we say, I went to her funeral, and I regretted I never did tell her about Christ. I assumed she had to be. But I found out at the funeral she refused to add anything to do. She didn't want to sing a hymn or any such things. And that is my, shall we say, one regret. I missed someone. I remember being told a story about a preacher on his deathbed, he got up and said, I've got to go to win one more for Christ. And that was probably one of the last things he said. And I always remember that. I didn't talk to that one more.